Hello everyone, I hope you're all well and welcome to episode 123 of the James Layton Fitness Podcast. Now in this specific podcast we'll be discussing what catches a lot of people out when they're tracking their nutrition intake, their calories, protein, carbohydrate and fat intake within a fat loss phase, and that is underestimating their calories, but more specifically underestimating some of their dietary fat intake. And I'll explain shortly why dietary fats can in particular be very easy indeed to underestimate their calorie intake. One of the reasons why is just because they're so calorically dense. And I'll give you a couple of examples of a couple of foods that you just have a small amount too much, it can easily wipe out the energy deficit needed for fat loss. Unfortunately, this is why a lot of people get discouraged with tracking their nutrition intake. They may think they're doing everything right, they've got their training program in place, they're tracking their calories and macronutrients, they've used an online calculator, they think they should be in an energy deficit. However, because they're underestimating some of these dietary fats, because of this can easily wipe out the energy deficit needed for fat loss. So here's a couple of examples. Oils, nuts, nut butters in particular. So oils could be olive oil, coconut oil, nuts, nut butters, almond butter, peanut butter. Any of these, if you overconsume them just by a tiny amount, so for example, if you have another couple of tablespoons of olive oil, that can be at least a couple of hundred calories. The same for a peanut butter, a couple of tablespoons too much, another couple of hundred calories. Handful of nuts, easily another couple of hundred calories. You can really see just how easily you can wipe out the energy deficit with what appears to be just a tiny amount of food. And that's why fats in particular are quite tricky. Whereas if you were to get couple of hundred calories from carbohydrates, you'd need to eat a lot more total food, and therefore it's a bit more difficult to go over these carbohydrate targets. But with the fats, it's so easily done. So it's just really important to know, and even to the point where you may be having all of these foods within your daily nutrition intake, which is fine, but imagine if you just had another half a tablespoon of olive oil twice in your meals, and another small handful of nuts, another half a tablespoon of peanut butter. You just see how it just compounds throughout the day. This small inaccuracy ends out being 200-400 calories over your current targets, and that's easily enough to wipe out the energy deficit needed for fat loss. Particularly if you're a lightweight female, because your calories are much less, because you ultimately have less margin for error, this can really catch a lot of people out. So the takeaway message here is just to be cautious. Be cautious with all of your tracking, all of your different macronutrients when you're tracking, but more particularly the fats, just because they're so calorically dense, and it really does not take much of any of those foods I just mentioned to really wipe out the energy deficit needed for fat loss. So if you're getting discouraged with tracking your nutrition intake, I'd just suggest doing a full audit of your week's intake and just make sure that you're not potentially adding in too much of these foods. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with these foods. You can have them within your daily nutrition intake, but as I mentioned, they're so easy to overconsume just because they're so calorically dense. So thank you very much for listening. Hopefully that will help. Hopefully the week ahead you can start looking at your nutrition intake and making sure you're not underestimating some of your dietary fats. If you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to James Layton, Layton fitness.co.uk, you'll see a tab at the top of the page called free ebook, and you can download that immediately. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Thank you very much.